Megan. I'm so excited to spend some time with you and get to hear about your adventure. Hey, everybody, my name is Taylor Kirkwhite, and I'm here with Redshift Sports. And Megan. Megan here is a writer, cyclist, and adventure seeker who has truly seen the world on two wheels. Her joy on the bike is matched with impressive results as the 2024 winner of the Tour Divide, two times world 24-hour time trial champion, and has set the fastest known time on the BC Epic 1000, the Big Lonely, the Dark Divide 300, the Silver State 508, the Arkansas High Country, and the Log Driver's Waltz. Incredible resume there. And Redshift Sports is a company that's committed to innovation for the sake of adventure. So we're incredibly excited to sponsor and support Megan in all of her ambitions. So we hope for this event to be the first of many, as Megan aims to tackle all three mountain races this year. So we hope that you enjoy and return to follow along. So without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to Megan to kind of give us the exciting story of her Atlas mountain race.
Awesome. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, Taylor. I'm really excited to be here to get to tell this story. I'd like to start by thanking Redshift for their support, everyone for tuning in and watching this later. Nelson Trees and the Atlas Mountain Race organizational team for creating this wild adventure, and to Niels Langner and Stefan Chaleski for use of some of their photos in this presentation. So I'm going to do a bit of a recap, and then we're going to do some questions throughout and at the end. And I think that's where we're going today. So thanks for tuning in.
Let's go.
Okay. So I guess slide. So as Taylor mentioned, this year my goal is to tackle all three of the Mountain Race series events. So that's the Atlas Mountain Race, the Hellenic Mountain Race, and the Silk Road Mountain Race. I turned 40 this year. I decided it would be a good excuse to take a big swing and do something different and challenging. I'm not really a mountain biker. I'm more of an adventure cyclist who does a bit of gravel and a bit of pavement. So this is taking me outside of my comfort zone. Coming into this race, my goal was to realize my current potential, whatever that looked like. And I also hoped to really embrace my competitive spirit while simultaneously leaning into the aspects of racing that I love the most. So long hours in incredible scenery, the internal satisfaction of pushing myself beyond everyday limits, those sorts of things. I also wanted to prioritize purpose over performance. So though I'm really competitive, and I think that I'm known as an athlete who has pretty good performances, I wanted that purpose to be something bigger. And for this year, my bigger purpose is to kind of help contribute to the dynamic and growing women's field. And if it was just performance-based goals and I wasn't winning, then I might be upset or disappointed or really feel like I wasn't hitting my targets. And I didn't want to have everything hinge on a win. And so right now my goal is instead to be part of the story of women's bike pack racing, which I think is an exciting story. And I'm really proud to be part of the scene. So a little bit about the Atlas Mountain Race. For those who don't know, the Atlas Mountain Race is a fixed route, unsupported, single stage cycling race that starts in Marrakesh and crosses the Moroccan Atlas Mountains before taking riders through the Anti-Atlas Range and on to Essaouira. The route is 1,300 kilometers, over 20,000 meters of elevation. It crisscrosses high passes, scorched plains, remote oases along some of the most grueling terrain in Morocco. There's not much pavement, there's not a lot of resupply, and some of the roads have been forgotten and fallen into disrepair. So it makes for a really exciting course.
I
Slide.
love, Megan, that this photo that we're using as the intro is like the one exception to the terrain here, but
Right?
it makes sense that that's where the photographers could catch you.
That's really true. I love the smoke in the background. It looks like I'm just flying through the landscape, just
It's on
powering along
fire.
that pavement. Yeah. So I think everybody wants to know about the bike. This is my ride. I am a salsa sponsored athlete this year, and I'm really excited to be part of that team. This was the maiden voyage on my brand new salsa cutthroat C-Force CO axis transmission. I had ridden this bike about 10 kilometers before taking it to Morocco. So it really is a brand new bike.
Oh my gosh.
I guess some of the things I'll note, I'm using light bicycle wheels. They're really wide. I've paired it with a dynamo hub so that I have lighting and the ability to charge my electronics. I've had trouble with charging in the past, so I really rely on that dynamo quite a bit to keep things powered and juiced up. I have power pedals on there, aero bars. I'm using the Redshift Sports Cruise Control Undertape grips for more comfortable padding on my hands. I'm using a heat molded reform saddle for the first time ever, and my bags are Apidura Backcountry Series packs. So I'll just go through quickly what I kind of have in each. The long top tube bag has my electronics in it, some hygiene items, multi-tool, things I use all the time. The big frame bag that has my hydration reservoir, it's 3 liters, and some smaller items like gloves and arm warmers. The down tube bag has my spare tubes, repair kit, stuff that I hopefully won't have to access too often. For the race, I had 2 feed sacks for my snacks. The seat post bag has my warmer layers, my required puffy jacket, 7 mesh mission rain jacket, and sleeping bag. Also for the race, I had a little sleeping mat strapped to the top of that seat post bag that you'll see pictured in other images. So I also brought Apidura's small packable backpack. It expands to 13 liters. And I use that quite a bit for resupply because a lot of it was really bulky. So I would just toss it in the bag and throw it on my back instead of fiddling with like stuffing things into the feed sacks. So slide. So my bike was delayed 24 hours getting to Marrakesh. I gave myself about a week before the race to be in Morocco, and I'm really glad I had that extra time to do some touring and for my bike to get there. The photo on the left is my bike when it arrived, and the photo on the bike on the right is the bike that I raced on. And you might notice one difference. There's a suspension, front suspension.
I'm
So
so
because
glad you brought this up because this is one of the things that people ask a lot of questions about. So folks are really excited to hear about how your experience with introducing suspension and especially any changes that you might make going forward in regards to suspension. So it's so crazy that you made that last minute change and folks are excited to hear about it.
Yeah, it felt crazy to me too. I have very little experience riding with suspension. I worked as a care attendant for someone with a spinal cord injury, and that was my introduction to off pavement riding. And I rode a full suspension bike with him. So that's my only experience with kind of a mountain bike before. I feel like the Cutthroat is a very capable bike, but what I'd heard about the Atlas Mountain Race is that it was quite chunky and a bit of a reach for gravel biking. So I wanted to put the front suspension on, but had trouble kind of getting all the parts to adapt the Cutthroat for the suspension. And because I left a bit early, I didn't get everything I needed before I flew out. So I had the wonderful Mel Webb from the media team take some extra parts, or had some parts shipped to her. She brought them to Marrakesh. And when I finished touring, I went to one of the local bike shops. I think it was Atlas Mountain Sport. And I was like, can you put this suspension on my bike for this race I'm doing tomorrow?
Oh my God, you literally did it the day before.
Yeah. Yeah, probably 28 hours before.
I mean, we know that just by nature of doing this race, there's got to be like a little crazy in there, but it's nice to have that confirmed.
Yeah, yeah. I
Awesome.
was glad I made the switch. I wish I didn't do it at the last minute, and I wish I'd had a bit more time to kind of test ride it and see how the bike fit changed. And I kind of assumed that because I was riding a new cutthroat, it would be just the same as my old one that I was very familiar with. And the geometry is a little bit different. I had a different saddle on, and the suspension brings the bike up a bit. And I didn't really consider all of those changes. Um, and I will have to do some more fine tuning with bike fit going forward. For instance, it brought the bike up a bit, so that long top tube bag was like hitting me in the crotch every time I got off, which resulted in a bit of discomfort over time. So I will
Yikes.
probably move to a smaller top tube bag to just have a bit more space, I guess.
Mhm.
And the reach felt longer with the suspension, so I had since moved my seat up a little bit to be more comfortable. But kind of dealing with all this in the race, I didn't make any changes. I just kind of dealt with the discomfort. Like my brain isn't thinking beyond like immediate problem solving. Yeah, I think I'm glad I got the suspension on. Wish I did it earlier. Um, so as people probably know already, I name all my bikes, and I decided to name this one Constance, since she's going to be my constant and steadfast companion. So excited to get to know her over the course of Atlas Mountain Race.
That's amazing. So, especially hearing that you don't have a dedicated off road background, one of the questions that Roberta Dunlop and others echoed was, did you feel that on the cutthroat you were under biking? Basically, that you didn't have, enough suspension to tackle the terrain. And it may be that, your understanding of that evolves as you take on these gnarly events and introduce kind of other suspension components. But what would you say for the terrain? Did you feel that you were underbiked?
I think because I added the suspension, I felt all right with things. I didn't descend in the drops as much as I usually do because it was a bit chunkier and rougher, and I just felt a bit anxious. And when I get scared, I get upright, which is not necessarily a great habit to have, but that's what I do. So I think there was a few times where I just felt like my skill set did not match the terrain and I didn't feel as confident as I would have liked to feel. And, that's totally on me. And I walked a couple times that felt really sketchy descending. But yeah, I have some work to do this year in my technical writing.
Yeah, and it can be so hard to decipher what is a skill related issue and what is an equipment related issue.
That's a good
So it'll
point.
be a really interesting journey for you as you just experiment with a lot of different setups and feel what makes you feel empowered and confident on a variety of different terrain. Someone else, Eric here, had asked how you chose a drop bar versus a flat bar, and especially hearing that you tend to put yourself in an upright position when you're descending. Do you have any thoughts of changing your cockpit setup for the future?
That's a great question. I've been riding a drop bar because that's what I'm familiar with, because I've come from a road cycling background. I think that I'm going to try out a flat bar for Hellenic Mountain Race because there's more descending in that. So, yeah, my plan is to add a flat bar and see how that goes. I think you're totally right, Taylor. I think that this is going to be a season of experimentation and learning, and I'm excited about that. But I'm also realizing that it is, yeah, it's going to be a lot of work on my end. And my favorite part about cycling is being out there and just like biking and moving through amazing landscapes. I don't love the research component and swapping things out. And I'm stoked that I have a bike shop sponsor, Chainline Cycles in Kelowna, to help me out with this stuff. But admittedly, I would rather just be out riding than fiddling with things. So I need to embrace that part of it this year, though.
I love that so much. I honestly think it's a gift. Like there's, some of us that get so obsessed with the details that it can actually be a barrier to just getting out and trying things out. So embrace that as a gift also. Well, thanks for sharing. That's exciting. We're excited to hear how it goes with a flat bar for the next event.
Slide. As I mentioned, I arrived early. I did some touring in Imlil and the Orgain Valleys. This was an amazing chance for me just to get a bit familiar with Morocco. Um, I received a lot of warnings to be careful, and yeah, not a lot of positive encouragement about coming here, actually. So I felt some trepidation and some actual fear when I first arrived. And I remember when I was biking out of Marrakesh after my bike arrived, and someone had told me a story about being pulled off their bike by some children. And so I saw two kids on a gravel road and they were running towards me, and my heart raced. I was absolutely terrified of these two like 5-year-old children. And they ran beside me and waved and smiled and had the biggest, bestest grins. And afterwards, I just kind of laughed and I was like, wow, Meaghan. um, yeah, yeah. So I think for me, arriving early was a chance to kind of get those jitters out and try out some of the food and meet people. And I thought I would help acclimatize to the heat, but I was actually in quite chilly places. So instead, I kind of learned to expect how cold things might get. And I really enjoyed the touring. I wish that I had done a bit more gravel, but I wasn't that creative with route planning, so I did more pavement, and it was just a nice way to kind of ease into the race. Slide. So as I mentioned, the race starts in Marrakesh. Now we're getting into like the actual recap part. So it starts at 6 p.m., which is kind of a challenging time to start. The one other evening start that I've done, besides the 24-hour time trials, was the TCR, which started at 10 p.m. I was staying at the race hotel and I opted to get a late checkout. So I didn't actually vacate my room until about 5 p.m. I slept until 9:30 just to try and bank as much sleep and be really relaxed and have that space to myself. And I think that was a really good move. There is, I think, 265 riders, but about 30 women. So a little bit over 10%. But within the women's field, it was a really competitive field. We had Mariah Moldenhauer, who went on to take the win, Masha Walig, Emma Masale, Rachel Nolan, Sherry Cardona, just some really, really powerhouse athletes that I was really stoked to meet and have as part of the field. Um, the first kind of big challenge is Telluride Pass at, I think, around 22,600 meters, and it had snowed the week before. So that was kind of the first thing we rolled into, was this big climb, and I was glad to have fresh legs. I had, as mentioned, just put the suspension fork on, and it felt not right immediately from the get-go. As soon as I kind of toggled it on, I had a little, I don't know, handlebar switch thing for it. I don't know what those are called. It something felt wrong. And so I immediately locked it out because it just felt like something I didn't want to mess around with. So I rode the first 30 hours without the suspension fork in use. It was just this extra weight, and I was kind of trying to problem solve while I was riding and figure out what was going on. When I got to CP1, I actually saw Nelson there, and I asked if he had any specialized. What did I say? It was something really stupid. I was like, I know this is a self-supported race, but like, you don't have any tools for a suspension fork that I could use. And he was like, no, we don't have tools for your suspension fork. And I didn't even know what I would have needed, but I just knew something was wrong. And I was like, okay, I'll be fine. I'm sure I'll be fine.
Oh my
uh,
gosh, what a way to start.
yeah, it created a lot of anxiety internally,
Yeah.
and I had been riding without a suspension, so I figured I could tackle it, maybe have to walk a bit more, but it was just kind of this, like my mind was trying to process what was going on. About 36 hours in, I realized it was my down tube bag just rubbing on the wheel when it was compressed. So a very simple problem that could have
Oh,
been figured out from a test ride. And I'm sure you've had questions about what was wrong with my suspension fork. There was nothing wrong. It was user error.
oh. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to discover that and you had the tools to fix your suspension fork all along. Amazing.
It was like
Um,
moving the bag 2 inches. It was
yeah.
such a small thing and a great example of why one should test ride their equipment.
Oh, we love the shakedown ride happening during the race. Amazing. Can I
Yeah.
take you back to you had some insight into the dynamic of the women's field and someone from the light bicycle team specifically was inquiring about the vibe of the women's field and how did it feel? Like, was there a mass start where the women's field is starting with everyone all together? And, do you keep an eye on where the other women are in the field? Are you racing with our other women? What's it like to have kind of a race within the race?
Oh, that's such a great question. It was really exciting to be part of a bigger women's field. The last race I did was Arkansas High Country, and there was one other female racer who actually DNF'd at the first photo checkpoint due to a mechanical. So I knew that if I finished, I would win the women's field. And that's one kind of race. I was competing against the women's FKT at that time, so kind of creating my own challenges. But it's way more exciting to be part of an actual field. And before the race, I think we kind of have like eyes out for each other, and I think that me and other women kind of make an effort to say hi to other female athletes because we are part of a smaller field, and I think we know that it's important to support each other. I rode a little bit with Mariah on the first evening on the pavement heading out of Marrakesh, and it was nice to chit chat a little bit with her. And I think we both listened to podcasts with each other, so it's kind of cool to actually talk with this person whose voice you have heard online. So I would say it's a really supportive field. When I was actually racing, I didn't think much about the women's field until further in because I was too preoccupied with my fork to
Yeah.
really like care about, yeah, to care about much else. I was just focused on my safety first and figuring this out before I felt like I could even be competitive.
Wow, that really like paints a picture of just how preoccupying it is to have a mechanical issue like that,
Yeah.
that you're not even really thinking about your timing, your pacing, your competition. You're just like, don't die. Don't let this equipment fail on me and put me in an unsafe position. Should I stop and fix it? Should I keep
Yeah.
going? It's just a hard battle.
It is. I feel like I repeated that to myself so many times. Like, just stay safe, Megan. Just stay safe. Like, that's your primary focus right now. And as I mentioned, it was a little bit outside of my skill set. And I do think I ride a bit on the conservative side of things. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to hurt myself. So yeah, first night, Telluride Pass, CP1 was only maybe 126 kilometers in, but I think there was like 4,000 meters of elevation before that. So a whole lot of climbing. It was a bit of a mad rush of resupply and just kind of getting your brevet card filled out and riding through the first night. The nights are long in Morocco at this time of year, pretty much as long as the days, and the temperatures were quite chilly. So just about, staying in motion. And when that sun came in the morning, I just felt blessed. It felt so good to see the sunrise. Slide. Ta-da, the sunrise.
Oh my god.
um, as I mentioned, the nights are long and chilly. I kind of rode through the first night just more concerned about my fork than anything else. And then as the day came, there was some easier terrain that you could just kind of cruise on. And I really started to maybe feel the vibe of the race, feel some appreciation for the landscape around me, which was so different than home, so different than the pavement we'd left behind in Marrakesh. and just kind of feeling swept up in this current, and enjoying the experience of being out on the road, and using the beauty of the terrain and the strangeness of the environment to kind of keep me motivated and excited about racing.
Yeah, I feel like this picture really paints a lot of just like being present in the environment, especially with all the fort concerns that you're battling through, like from touring and ultra, distance racing, like just having those precious moments where you snap back to the present moment. This picture speaks that volumes for me. That's amazing.
Yeah. I guess slide. So the first day there was some remote sections without resupply. I was pretty well fueled up, so that yeah, that was fine. But this photo is taken in Afra after a long stretch with no resupply, about I think 9 p.m. You can see I've got my big headlamp on, and that's actually Mariah in the background. So I was really excited to have caught her. I wasn't watching the tracker. I felt really like I was like, oh yeah, I've caught the person who might be in the lead. I'm not sure. And then she tells me that she's already slept for like 2 hours and eaten a couple omelets and fueled up, and she's just like ready to go. And I've been awake for 36 hours and am ready to lie down and have some rest, right? So it was this moment of elation, and then not defeat, but just kind of taken down a notch or two. So yeah, so that was kind of a funny moment. At the resupply, there was a couple of other riders there, and they had chatted with somebody who was able to let us kind of sleep in, I don't know, in a space indoors. And I said yes initially. And we walked over to the space, and I realized I'd be sharing a room with two men I didn't know, and we'd all be vying for showers in the same bathroom. And I was just like, no, this isn't for me. I'm not going to sleep well with people I don't know around me. I need my space. So I opted to continue on out of Afra for maybe 5 or 10 kilometers. And I found a spot to bivvy down and kind of have what I needed for a good sleep, which was, yeah, a quiet place to call my own for the night and not be around other snoring riders. And I think that was a good decision. I wish I hadn't kind of messed around, like waffling about what I wanted to do for sleep beforehand, but I do think I made the right decision.
That makes so much sense. I was wondering, and other folks asked about this as well, with a sleep schedule, are you just riding yourself into the ground and then responding to your like dire needs, or do you plan out when you're going to stop, when you're going to sleep?
That's a great question. I planned for the first night to try and sleep somewhere after Afra, after I hit that resupply stop, and I knew I'd be good to go for the morning. And then I planned to stop every night kind of around like midnight-ish. Midnight is the time that I usually turn into a pumpkin. My pace drops. I'm not sure if it's in my body or seeing the clock, but I just become a fool. I am not. I am not the same person, and I need some sort of reset at that point usually. So that was kind of my guidance to ride until the evening when I felt quite fatigued, and then look for a spot to sleep. I slept outside 3 times, and I slept at CP3 as well. And I have a pretty cozy sleep setup, so I had really great sleeps outdoors. I felt like we were on pretty remote roads. I wasn't worried about being disturbed or interrupted. Um, to ensure I slept even better, I put earplugs in, which isn't something I do if I feel unsafe, because you might want to hear a bear approaching or something. But it does help me sleep. It just muffles any sort of outside sound. So that's one of the things I use. Um, and then in the morning when I wake up, the struggle is always to be efficient packing up, and it's hard to pull myself out of that cozy sleeping bag and get back on the bike. And when I'm fatigued, I'm quite cold, and you're just, yeah, not really. I find I'm not really functioning until I've been on the bike about a half hour and I've had something to eat and drink and warmed up a bit. So that to me is probably the biggest challenge, is getting back on the bike in the morning.
That totally makes sense. So it sounds like you were actually stopping for chunks of time and kind of building that into your routine, which I'm sure made a big difference. And like you said, your priority was to be able to enjoy this, and so taking care of your health aids you in doing that. So that's awesome. It also sounds like people are curious about kind of your food and your meals rotation.
Mm.
Sounds like at least in the mornings, you're just kind of rolling out of your sleeping bag, forcing yourself onto the bike, and then eating and drinking while you're already rolling, not necessarily preparing or sitting down for a whole meal. Hey?
That sounds about right. Yeah, in the morning I would just try and start fueling as soon as I could. I often carried like a fizzy drink in one of my feed sacks, so Coke. There's this amazing drink called Hawaiian here, and I think it's like maybe passion fruit, coconut, and pineapple or orange or something. It's trash, but it's great. I love it. So that's something I'd use to kind of get some calories into me first thing in the morning. I don't even know if it was caffeinated or not. I hope it was. Um, and then I would stop when there was resupply. I had a pretty good idea of what was coming up based on the cue sheets and the information that the race provided. My plan was not to stop and eat very much, but I actually stopped a few more times than I had planned to because I just felt really fatigued and I felt like I needed to stop. Looking back, I think some of those stops could have been skipped, but at the moment, I just felt like I needed this. It's also, you know, I think it's hard in your gut to be eating kind of those sugary snacks for resupply all the time. So to have something savory that is coming out hot also felt really good. If we go to the next slide, I think I have some food to show you. Ta-da! So these are a few of the things that I ate. We have the big liter or liter and a half bottle of water, Coke. I think there's some sweet treats. I ate a bunch of tangerines. They were so good, so fresh and delicious. Chips and other things. I had couscous and vegetables at CP3, and my stomach was upset that day. It was delicious. I probably ate like a quarter of it. So that was kind of a frustrating experience, but yeah, there's great food in Morocco. I've really enjoyed it. When you're racing, it's hard to get that great food into you, and it ends up being a lot of packaged cakes and sweet things, and some of them aren't too delicious, and some of them are fine, but you just get sick of it. Yeah, so I guess for the second day, there's still some long hauls between resupply. I started to get some pain in my lower back. I've experienced this once before, and I think some of it this time was due to having a bit of a different bike fit and not having the mileage on this bike. And for ultra, it's really important to be familiar and comfortable in your kit. And just because I was riding a new bike with some changes like the suspension fork, I didn't maybe quite feel as comfortable. So that was kind of my battle once I figured out what was rubbing on the suspension fork was the lower back pain. I just felt like there was kind of like a disconnect between my lower body and my upper body, and it made it difficult for things like hike a bike. And it's something I'm going to have to continue to address this season because I don't want it to infringe on my other races like it did this time around. I was yeah, also maybe feeling a bit of like upset stomachness. I yeah, didn't really think too hard about what I was eating or not eating. If I'm gonna blame it on something, I think I probably drank warm yogurt a few times that was not refrigerated properly. Which sounds
That could
terrible,
do
but
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to make some impromptu stops on the side of the road to
Mm.
relieve myself that day, and I'm glad I just had trouble one day, and after that I was all good. So wasn't food poisoning or anything horrific, but it just kind of made things uncomfortable.
Right. You don't want to spend your precious stops, like, having to get off the bike unplanned.
Yeah, yeah. So So this is headed towards CP2, and I can't pronounce the name of this town. Azararagath. It's 566K in. There's some nice climbs leading up to it, and just some really interesting terrain. You can see the palms in the background and the rocks, and I feel like my photos do not capture how interesting and bizarre and I don't know. I just felt like it was kind of like magical. Um, so headed into CP2, I was not feeling great. My back hurt, my stomach was upset, and I was just using the landscape and the encouragement of the few locals that we'd run into to buoy me up. So I think every single person I saw would give me a thumbs up, or like say "Allez, allez," or something. I feel like people were really stoked to see me out on the course, and that was just exciting and a little bit of motivation to kind of keep going. So when I wasn't feeling great, I really tried to kind of fall into the rhythm of riding and use any momentum I had to carry me forward, um, and avoid that kind of stop start pattern as much as possible because it really slows you down. So,
That's
uh,
really interesting insight. One of the questions that people ask a lot here is about your pacing and your race strategy. And what I'm hearing kind of makes me think, this isn't even just a 24-hour time trial where you can just set a goal and say, okay, I'm going to do between this watt and this watt.
mm.
But it's so much dependent on these unknowns as well. If you're even able to keep going. But if you could talk about your pacing strategy, if you have one, folks would love to hear. Are there times where are you in zone two the whole time? Or are there times where kind of give yourself a little bit more of a lead and say, all right, this climb, I'm really feeling it. I'm going to go all in. Did you go real hot off the gate because it's exciting and you're in a mass start? So just talk to us a little bit of.
Oh boy. I think I went in way too hot, and I could tell by my power numbers. And I usually don't run power on longer events, either because I'm having tech issues or because I know that I'm going to be low power later on. But this time I tried to run power, and I did, and I did not reel myself in the first night. My ego took control. And then, as expected, my power numbers were really, really low from like day 3 on. And that was like depressing to see. I thought my power meter was broken. And of course it wasn't.
Oh my gosh.
I was just so fatigued. So I went out too hot, and I tried to focus on the climbs and just kind of, stay steady and consistent, and keep working my way to the top. I found it difficult to pace because the terrain changes so much, and there's sections that are so much slower than other parts, and I think um, I'll compare it to the Tour Divide, where you can kind of you can just kind of factor in elevation and roughly estimate your pacing. For this course, I didn't find I was able to do that so much because there was just bits that challenged me a lot more, and I slowed down more than I expected to. I think if you are looking to pace on a course like this, reviewing other people's times on Strava would be a really great way to do it. And you have an idea of what sections are slow that maybe you couldn't tell from the ride with GPS file. So I think looking at other people's times, and looking at people's times who you feel are, kind of similar to your own. And yeah, don't compare yourself to Alex McCormick unless you are going for that top position, right? Yeah, so I had a bit of a pacing strategy going into the event, but I felt like it disintegrated probably by like day 3. Yeah, yeah, I
That
think that's all I can say about that.
totally makes sense. I mean, you have to respond to the actual conditions that you're being greeted with. And if
Yes.
you've not done this particular event before and in these conditions and these weather, and with this gear, it's you just have to adapt. And it sounds like you did a great job of just meeting the conditions that you were dealt with and adapting to roll with the punches.
Mm. Yeah, I think that you know, the simplest thing is just riding your bike, and sometimes that's all you need to do is just kind of one foot ahead of the other, whether you're pedaling or hiking. And I felt like my mind was, um, it was able to do that. But thinking about pacing or trying to referencing my pacing strategy was beyond me
Yep.
further in. Um, so this photo on the left is at CP2. I was really happy to get here, but took a longer break than I would have liked. I ordered my food. I took a shower. I came down expecting my food to be ready. And they're like, oh, we'll start making your food now. And I was like, oh no. And at that point, I should have just grabbed some stuff and left. But I sat around and waited for the couscous and vegetables that I didn't eat because my stomach was upset, and just wasted a lot of time. And that was silly of me. I think that if you need a break, then sleeping is probably the best thing to do. And for me, maybe pushing on, even though I was tired, and going to sleep a bit earlier and getting more sleep at night would have made more sense than just kind of like lounging around the control on my phone waiting for food. That was just a bit silly. So not, yeah, that was something I would change in the future. After the control, there's this amazing descent, and I kind of went from being frustrated with myself to just forgetting about myself and realizing that I am part of this big, amazing world, and the environment is, yeah, the environment just kind of took over, and I just relished being there. So slide. Yeah, so this was the descent. Yeah, it just speaks for itself, I think. It really flipped my mood from one of frustration with myself to immense gratitude for being there. And I think I was able to kind of get my head back in the game for the night shift. Slide. So I think that's the moon. We had a full moon kind of near the end of the race, which was awesome. Just it felt really beautiful to be out there. Um, as hard as it can be to kind of navigate in the dark sometimes, I also found it was calming. So I think I've kind of expressed some of my anxieties and stresses. Um, at night, everything just kind of slowed down a bit, and I felt more relaxed, and I really enjoyed the night riding actually. And I feel, yeah, I feel like it was a nice shift from the day where sometimes you just kind of felt a little bit overwhelmed maybe by the heat or by saying hi to everybody or about other racers passing you. So the night was always a welcome relief. Uh, I wanted to talk about safety a little bit because I think we probably have a couple questions about this. So when I'm racing, I feel like I'm flipping a switch, and things that normally concern me don't. So I don't think as much about my own safety or about looking weird or strange or out of unusual. I just kind of feel like I flip into a bit more of a competitive mode, and other parts of my brain turn off. Um, I had some concerns going into the race about being female traveling alone in Morocco, but after touring, I wasn't so worried. And I guess I can also say that I can only speak from my personal experience. I didn't have any safety issues while I was racing, just like I didn't have any tire issues while I was racing, but other people might have. So I can, yeah, just speak from my experience. Um, I will say that it's impossible to be invisible as a cyclist in Morocco. Everybody notices you. And that can be a nice thing, getting thumbs up and encouragement, and invited in for tea and meals. Like that's really cool. But it can also be kind of annoying. Sometimes the kids are a bit overwhelming. In the city, everybody's trying to hustle you. But I think, yeah, it's just something that I think is a truth. Like you're just not invisible. And my only negative experiences with people in Morocco have really been in the cities, folks telling me that I'm going the wrong way and they'll show me the right way. And just clearly they are just taking me somewhere I don't want to go. And yeah, I think that the route was quite rural, which can sound intimidating, but to me, I really love that. I love the fact that I was in the middle of nowhere by myself with the moon and maybe another rider or two, maybe some camels, I don't know. And I didn't really run into people after dark, and I always felt like I was able to camp not too far from the road, but out of sight, which I like because I don't want to waste too much energy finding a good spot to bivvy. So my primary concern was just wiping out and hurting myself. So
That's great to hear. Yeah, we have a number of folks here asking about, your experience kind of traveling in Morocco, especially as a solo female, and it sounds like you had an overall really positive experience, which is awesome.
yeah, definitely. And I've been touring a bit afterwards. And again, really, really lovely experiences with people. Yeah.
You're still in Morocco now, right?
I am, yeah. I'm in Chefchaouen in the north.
Okay, awesome.
So yeah, this is heading up the old Colonial Road section. This is kind of one of the infamous parts of the route. It's a road that is just amazing and beautiful, but no longer in service. There's a few parts that are collapsed. It's quite rough and bumpy. It's just this beautiful feat of engineering, and the mountains are absolutely stunning. It's a really special portion of the route. Um, the sections that were collapsed, there's a little bit of like hauling your bike, and I kind of felt um, a bit challenged by those sections, and I feel like that was due to my lower back pain, and I kind of made it up and down them, but I was surprised by how hard I found them, and I think the fork adds a little extra weight to the bike. I was carrying extra water because I was worried about running out, so there was some extra extra pounds there, but I feel like the lower back pain made the hike a bike sections harder than I was anticipating, and I usually feel quite strong in those sections. And as I've told people, like I do the Stairmaster to prepare for kind of those like heavy vertical up and downs, but I yeah didn't manage as well as I would have hoped this time.
In those hike-a-bike sections, are you generally pushing your bike alongside you, or are you carrying your bike, or a little bit of both?
For the old Colonial Road sections, I was carrying it. It's quite steeply pitched. In general, I kind of like lean into the aero bars and just like heave my weight into the bike, and I feel like it's the laziest way of doing a hike a bike, and hope that I can just kind of keep pushing the bike up. Yeah, and if it's really rough, I'll carry it, but that's my go-to is leaning into the aero bars.
Wild. Yeah.
Slide. So these are some of the views on the old Colonial Road. I was really glad that my suspension fork was working for the descent, because it was quite chunky and loose, and I was able to, really enjoy it. Slide. The next town after the old Colonial Road is Isfahan, and I didn't intend to stop there, but there's a few other riders. There's some bike tourists kind of cheering us on, and the guy running the shop that I stopped at was just really friendly. So you can see I've got like 4 eggs in tomato sauce with olives and some bread. I also got like a latte, and I just had a really, really nice resupply. I think this was the first food that I enjoyed for maybe 24 hours because of my stomach, and it put me in a great position for the next stretch of road. Slide. There's a fairly remote section after the resupply in Isfahan, but it's gorgeous. It's this canyon that you're riding into, and there's all these kind of little palm oases and villages. Um, and it gets kind of steep, yeah, kind of steep climbing out of it, but just absolutely beautiful. I really had to stop myself from stopping to take pictures. I wanted to like just document this, and it was hard not to. So I just had to try and like absorb it with every cell of my body. So this is yeah, just one of the little villages, I guess. Slide. So I knew that I wanted to push on to CP3. I got there at maybe like 1 in the morning, and it was really challenging the last hour or two because, as I mentioned, after midnight I turned into a pumpkin, and it was descending. And when you're descending, your body isn't working so much, so everything kind of like slows down, and so it was really hard to stay awake. But the knowledge that I was going to get to the next checkpoint and hopefully get to sleep inside for the first time in the race was enough to motivate me. I made up for my slow CP2 stop at CP3. So I just got some juice, drank it, took a shower, went to bed. Um, I woke up in the morning when Rachel Nolan in third place was coming into my room to sleep. So we kind of swapped spots, and that lit a fire under me to skip breakfast and get out of there. So I just grabbed some food, started riding into the darkness. And this is one of the first things I saw after sunrise. There's a few paved climbs after CP3, which was kind of nice because paved climbs are easier than gravel climbs. So I was making pretty good time. And then I woke up to, these beautiful views and some gravel descending. Slide. And then there was this canyon, and I think, probably my low point in the race. So I had come off some gravel descents, and there's like a tiny road section, and then you turn off into this pretty rough canyon. And as I turned off, I kind of guessed myself, and I guess I hit some kind of marbly gravel, and I just like flew off the bike. I landed on my stomach, I winded myself, I scraped myself up, and I wasn't injured, but it was just, when you wind yourself, it's a bit of a shock. And I kind of did a check in, realized I was fine, but I think I was a bit shaken after that. So for the next few hours, I feel like my competency on the bike just like went downhill. And anytime it looked a little sketchy, I had to get off and walk because I was just afraid of falling again. And yeah, that was just a frustrating experience for myself. And over the course of the next 24 hours, my confidence came back. But I opted to wait until I got to another resupply before cleaning up. And then by the time I got to the next kind of resupply stop, I was just covered in dust and blood. And I felt like a hazard to the universe. And where I stopped didn't have a sink or anything, so I asked the shop owner if I could wash my hands, and he took a scoop of water from like a bucket and took me out behind the shop and poured it on my hands while I washed, and then helped me wash up that way. It was a really really kind gesture. And then he closed the shop so they could go off and pray, and I was left with a bunch of children wondering who this weird bloody person trying to clean themselves up, and filling up my hydration bladder and frantically eating food was. And yeah, it was a bit of a ridiculous scene. And yeah, and then I headed out um into the sand section.
Can I jump in here real quick, Megan? So a couple of people have asked about kind of the lowest point in your race, and it does sound like, having that crash and the resulting just kind of confidence shake
Yeah.
was a big part of that for you. We have a rider here that's taking on a big 24-hour race for the first time, and she's just especially wondering on any kind of tips that you have for getting through those inevitable low moments that are going to happen during a big event like that.
I think reminding yourself that nothing lasts forever, the highs or the lows. And that's a lesson that I've learned and I've relearned. Um, I got into road cycling and riding long distances as an audax or randonnier cyclist in the prairies where there was really bad headwinds. And I remember a few times where I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I can't keep fighting this headwind. Like, I will perish here on this, like, stretch of road. Um, and then I learned that the headwinds, they just don't last forever. Something shifts, the angle will change, or you'll come around a corner, or, um, you know, something will change. So I think just remembering that your present circumstance won't last forever is really helpful and kind of helps you weather the highs and lows. And for me, tuning into the landscape and the beautiful terrain around me is really, really motivating. And I think probably one of the reasons why I've shifted from purely road riding to more mixed surface adventure cycling, just because the places that you can get when you get off the pavement are really special, and you can see a lot of beautiful things on the road as well. But I think in these more remote environments where you're not around other vehicles or people, you just kind of feel like you're seeing something for the first time. And that's not true. People have been there before you, you know. I saw lots of shepherds and local people with donkeys and things. Like, we're not the first people to be riding this course or visiting these places, but you do have that feeling like you're alone in the environment, which I think yeah, to me, there's something, yeah, really special about connecting in that way. You feel like it's one-on-one. So that's what I would say, remembering that nothing lasts forever, and then just tuning into the environment. And then maybe thirdly, just assessing, what the issue is and seeing if you can do anything about it. Like, I probably should have stopped to clean myself up before the resupply instead of getting sand and dirt in my cuts. But I didn't. So this is the sand section. It was labeled on the routed GPS file as just sand, and so I knew it was coming. It was challenging, but it wasn't, it wasn't like challenging in a sketchy descending kind of way. So I just powered through it as much as I could. I did have to walk quite a bit. I deflated my tires. I leaned back on the bike, and I felt like I was kind of mastering it. Like, I felt like I was getting into the groove. And then this headwind picked up, and just a little bit of headwind was enough to kind of not throw me off, but to make it so I wasn't able to ride. So I, yeah, walked parts of it. There was goats in the trees, which I totally was not hallucinating, so that was pretty cool. And yeah, just knowing that I had to get through this section marked sand was a challenge in a good way. Like, I was excited to kind of like get through it, and not get it behind me, but kind of, yeah, it was like a good challenge in a weird way. Um, this is near the end of the race. So after the sand section, I feel like I kind of flew towards the finish. There was some challenges in there, like the Moroccan Stelvio and more night riding, but I just felt like I was able to kind of carry that momentum into the finish. This photo is near Imswan, where the media crew met up with me, and I think I had headwinds for the final 100K, and I just didn't care. I saw camels. I waved at every single person. I saw like a crazy lady. I finally used the aero bars because of the headwind, so I was glad that they came in handy. And I was just on this high that I couldn't get knocked down from. Like, I was getting sunburned. I didn't care. Like, I was so full of stoke to be on the coast after such a challenging journey, and just, yeah, just feeling really good. I was also kind of pulling ahead of the female riders behind me, and I really wanted to secure a top 20 finish. So I knew that I would have to work hard to kind of keep that spot, and that was motivating enough to kind of keep the feet on the pedals to the finish. Slide. Um, so I was a filthy animal, but like I said, having the time of my life right at the end of the race, which I'm not sure if that means I should have slept less or I slept just enough, but yeah, that's it. Slide. I came in at sunset, right around the evening call to prayer, which was kind of a cool time to finish. It was a very different finish than most ultra races where I've been kind of, by myself with one or two other people. There was a whole crowd of folks that had finished before me, and the race director and Mariah, who had won, was there to give me a hug, and it felt just joyous to finish in the Medina in Essaouira with all of these people around supporting me at sunset. I finished in 5 days, 1 hour, 30 minutes. It was fast enough to secure me 19th overall, second in the women's division. And I ate a tagine, I drank a beer, and I hobbled off to my riad to take a shower. um, so it's me holding my brevet card very proudly. A cat welcoming the finishers. Usually there was someone there. I spent the next few days catching up with other riders and recovering. I had a lot of crepes. I hung out with the third place female finisher, Rachel Nolan, quite a bit, and Kellyanne. And I hope to visit them in Ireland. They're just two lovely athletes. And I really enjoyed the experience of seeing other finishers come in and celebrating with them and swapping stories and just getting to be part of that community was a real joy. And I think that that's a special part of this event. And slide. And here's where I am now. I'm in Chefchaouen. After the race, I took a bus to Marrakesh, and then I took a bus to Fez to spend a few days there. It's one of the oldest cities in North Africa. And then I started touring along the route of the caravans north and taking things at a slower pace, enjoying the scenery, drinking several lattes a day. And I've been in Chefchaouen for a few days. I'm staying right now, I'm in that room with the blue door. It's a little apartment and just feeling kind of settled in. Tomorrow I'm headed out on the road again, but it's been nice to be here and get to just experience Morocco a bit more before going home. So that's my recap. Thanks for listening.
Wow, what an amazing journey. Hats off to you for, just going through everything in, with eyes wide open and arms
Mm,
wide open. And I just love the way that you tell the story. I feel there's like some poetry in it. My favorite line that you shared was getting to a descent after feeling frustrated about your equipment and saying that you kind of forgot yourself. And I'm just like, if that doesn't describe the beauty of your ongoing relationship with Adventures on Two Wheels. So thank you so much for just taking the time to kind of put this story to words. It can be so hard to just even understand what something like this
yeah.
takes and what it takes out of you and what it gives back to you. And I feel like you've done a beautiful job of sharing all those aspects. Um, I think we really got through most of our questions
Awesome.
here throughout the story. And so I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us. And Redshift is really excited to continue to support Meaghan on so many incredible adventures with these mountain races. So we just ask that you stay involved with us, stay involved as a part of our community, and support us so that we can continue to support Meaghan. Redshift Sports makes all sorts of incredibly innovative bicycle components, many of which I feel could help solve some of Meaghan's problems going forward. So really excited to help alleviate your back pain and your suspension problems. So we're going to, continue to work together to dial in some of those challenges. And we invite you all to check us out at redshifsports.com so we can all kind of internationally continue our various adventures.
Thanks for having me, Taylor. I'm so excited to have the support of Redshift and be part of this community um, And thanks for everything that you and Ashley and everyone in the team has done to make this event happen and make it happen soon before I start to forget what the race was like. So it's a real joy to be able to share this while it's fresh. That's what I'm saying. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm excited that this can be something that we can all look back on and you can look back on as a little kind of journal entry of your experience.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone so much. And this will be posted on our Redshift Sports YouTube channel so that you can check it out if you missed us live. Bye.